私の研究室のジトントンさんの博士論文の最終審査会、公聴会を始めたいと思います。まずジトントンさん紹介します。First, I'd like to introduce Ji Tongtong from my lab. 2012年から16年まで、ヒューマンノーマ中国のヒューマンノーマル大学の、スクール・オブ・アートで、バチェラーのディグリーを取っています。2012 to 2016, the School of Art Bachelor Degree Human Normal University in China. 2016年から2019年までは修士課程、同じシアン交通大学のセトルシビルエンジニア、建築ですけれども、建築学部の修士を取っています。2016 from 2019 Master's Program School of Human Settlements and Civil Engineering Xi'an University China。2022年10月から北九州市立大学の建築コースで博士課程。2022 from October Doctor Program She's going to be Doctor Program Architecture course in University of 北九州。はい。それでは発表を始めます。お願いします。You should start.
Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to present my doctoral thesis named Thermal Comfort Improvement for the Rural Elderly in the Guangdong region and Age Stratified Analysis of Residential Environment. The whole thesis was divided into 7 chapters with the main chapter from chapter 4 to chapter 6. So with the global aging accelerating, China's elderly population is rising fast, as you can see on this chart. By around 2050, that about 24% of the population will be over 65. Since China has already entered an deep age society since 2020, and it's also expected to become a super age society by around 2035, which is going to bring a major challenge to the social support, healthcare, and housing. Now let's zoom into the urban-rural divide in China. As you can see on the left side, the green bars here represents the rural population in China, which has been declining since 2019 due to the migration of the younger labor forces from rural area to urban areas. As a result, the left-behind elderly phenomenon is becoming more serious. In 2020, the number of the elderly people aged 60 and above in rural areas was 8.27% higher than that in urban areas. Now let's look at the Guangdong region in central Shanxi province, the focus of this study. So by 2020, it had about 26 million people, with 19% of them aged 60 or above, higher than the national average. Around 37% of them still live in the rural area, meaning that many elderly live in the traditional rural dwellings, making this region highly representative of our study. This slide summarizes the development of thermal comfort models. The PDD model, PDD model proposed by Fenger in the 1970s is widely used, but is based on healthy young adults in the air-conditioned settings. So to address this, Humphreys and later the Brigger developed the adaptive comfort models, which is included into international standards since 2004. But as you can see that the elderly often have different thermal preferences due to the physiological changes and the cultural behavioral habits. So neither of previous model full accounts for rural elderly behavior and passive heating conditions. So in this study, developed a field-based regression model based on the on-site questionnaires and indoor measurements to better reflect winter thermal comfort in rural Guangdong areas. And the research has shown that thermal comfort response is different. That changed significantly with age. So due to the physiological differences, but most existing studies do not further differentiate the among the elderly subgroups. So to address this gap, this study divided elderly into 3 age groups: 60 to 69, 70 to 79, and 80 to 89, based on WHO and Chinese national guidelines, allowing for more precise analysis of age-related thermal responses. And also, as we all know, that China has a vast territory and diverse climate zones, and different housing conditions lead to wide variations in elderly thermal comfort needs. So especially rural dwellings that have relatively lower temperatures in winter, and rural elderly often tolerate lower temperatures than those who live in urbans. So it's important to classify rural dwelling types to assess their impact on comfort and health. So based on the literature review that the rural elderly population in China is growing rapidly, and many still live in poorly insulated dwellings with limited heating. So most thermal comfort models are based on younger urban populations and assume ideal indoor conditions. So based on those situations, there are 2 research gaps have been found. The first one is lack of thermal comfort studies focusing on age-specific differences among the elderly in the rural areas. The second gap is insufficient research and impact of diverse rural dwelling conditions on elderly thermal comfort. So the goal of this study is to propose a realistic and energy-conscious strategies that enhance winter thermal comfort for elderly residents while considering their age-related differences and practical constraints of the rural dwellings. So this study focused on Guangdong region of Shanxi province, which belongs to the cold climate zone of China. The climate database is based on Xi'an, the most representative city in the region. The field site is Yaotou village, located about 155 kilometers northwest of Xi'an. Is one of the region's culturally significant rural villages, with around 280 households, and majority of the residents engaged in farming and tofu production, which make this a typical example of rural living conditions in the Guangdong region. So based on the field investigation that we found, the existing dwellings can be categorized into 2 types. The first type is traditional dwellings, and the second type is modern dwellings. The traditional dwelling, also known as narrow courtyard dwellings, which were primarily constructed before 1980s, using ground earth as the main building materials. This kind of dwelling are normally 8 to 10 meters wide and 20 to 30 meters long from north to south, with a single slope roof, and the main living space is located in the east and west wings, and with an open courtyard set at the center. The modern dwelling is made primarily of red brick and concrete, which began to emerge in early 1990s during the new rural construction project, which held by the government. This kind of dwellings also retain the narrow and long form of traditional dwellings, but enclose the courtyard within the building. Unlike the urban areas, rural areas in Guangdong region do not have centralized heating systems or follow a scheduled heating period. The main heating method they're using is Kang heating system, like you can see on the left side, and coal stove heating method, like you can see on the right side. And the questionnaire design of this study was based on frailty scale developed by Rockwood to ensure that participants were in the good physical conditions can able to accurately report their thermal perceptions. The target participants were healthy elderly individuals aged 60 to 90 years old, who had lived in the local area for more than 10 years and already adapted to the local climate. So this slide summarized the questionnaire design. The questionnaire covered basic information and thermal sensation and temperature preferences, and also humidity sensation and humidity preference. And also air velocity preference and behavioral response to cold, and also ask for their clothing insulations and health conditions. This slide showed how I did the field investigation in Yaotou village. To understand the real living conditions of elderly residents, I first obtain the demographic data from the village committee and identify the households that matched the target age groups. Then, with the help from the village staff, I have to visit each of those households and conducted face-to-face interviews with them. And it wasn't easy. Many elderly residents had hearing difficulties, and sometimes I had to simplify the questions and also ask for help to translate the normal Mandarin into the local dialect to help them to better understand the question practically. So based on that, a total 80 and 126 residents participated in the winter and summer field investigations, and a total 286 questionnaires in winter and 454 in summer were collected. So during the winter field study, 3 traditional dwellings and 3 modern dwellings were selected for on-site measurements. The traditional dwellings were labeled T1 to T3, and the modern dwelling was labeled S1 to S3. Each represented a different heating method, aiming to explore how heating strategies affect the indoor environment and humidity environment. In summer, since no cooling system were used in the region, so only T1 and S1 were monitored to evaluate the indoor environmental conditions under natural ventilation. Since rural households are typically inhabited by elderly couples, so the main bedroom is most frequently used space, often serving as a combination of living room, kitchen, and sleeping area. So the indoor test point was set in the main bedroom. And each dwelling were monitored continuously for 48 hours with environmental data recorded every 30 minutes to capture the diurnal variations. So this slide illustrates the changes in indoor and outdoor temperature during the winter monitoring period. So as you can see, most dwellings showed significantly influence from the outdoor temperature. For the winter indoor relative humidity, that traditional dwellings show higher and more fluctuating humidity levels than those modern dwellings. While the modern dwellings maintain more stable humidities. For summer indoor temperature, the traditional dwellings provide relatively lower indoor temperatures but are more affected by outdoor variations. And modern dwellings show better stabilities here. For the summer indoor relative humidity, that due to the hygroscopic properties of the rammed earth wall materials, the indoor relative humidity in traditional dwellings was consistently 5 to 8% higher than that in modern dwellings. So in response to varying indoor thermal conditions, that elderly residents adapt behaviorally by adjusting their clothing. So clothing choice showed a clear age related correlationship, that the oldest residents, like 80 to 89 age group, show the consistently wear more insulations in both winter and summer, indicated a lower thermal sensitivity and a stronger need for external warmth. So the regression analysis here between clothing insulation and indoor operative temperature reviewed adaptive behavior differences across different dwelling types. In winter, the residents in modern dwellings adjust clothing more actively, while those who live in traditional dwellings have more relied on stable, thick clothing, have less responsive to temperature changes. In summer, greater clothing variation in modern dwellings suggested a higher thermal sensitivity, whereas stable indoor conditions in traditional dwellings reduced adjustment needs. The clothing insulation showed how elderly adapt through behavior, but while the thermal sensation vote here reflect how they feel. In winter, the most residents in traditional dwelling feel cool, while those who in modern dwelling feel slightly cool. And as age increased in winter, that the elderly become more sensitive to cold, with a significantly strong perception of coldness. And in summer, the most frequently reported thermal sensation in both dwellings was comfortable. And thermal comfort decreased with age in summer, as older individuals tend to feel less hot even under the same situation. So after understanding the subjective thermal sensations, we now turn to neutral temperature analysis, which offers a more objective look at elderly thermal preferences and sensitivity in both dwelling types. So this slide shows that in winter, elderly residents in modern dwelling have a higher thermal neutral temperature and a greater sensitivity to temperature changes compared to those in traditional dwellings. And also the steeper regression slope also suggested a stronger thermal response in relatively newer housing conditions. In this slide showed that modern dwellings have higher neutral temperature and a wider comfort range in summer, indicated a better adaptability to heat. In both dwelling types, the measured neutral temperature was higher than predicted, also suggested that the elderly are more heat adapted than conventional model assumes. So this points to a limitation of standard comfort model, which may not fully reflect the thermal tolerance in naturally ventilated rural settings here. This slide shows the residents' thermal expectations in different seasons and dwellings. In winter, more residents in traditional dwelling want the environment getting warmer, and compared to those who live in modern dwellings. In summer, the majority of the residents in both dwelling types prefer relatively lower indoor temperatures, showing a common discomfort with indoor heat. So beyond the dwelling differences, the age also plays an important role in thermal perception. This slide compared the neutral temperatures and thermal responses among different elderly age groups. The result indicated a clear age-related trend here. As you can see, the older individuals required higher neutral temperatures in both summer and winter. And in winter, their thermal sensitivity is lower due to the thicker clothing insulation. While in summer, they become more sensitive to temperature changes, leading to a higher and more concentrated comfort expectations. Based on the previous comparison of neutral temperatures by age group, this slide focused on the acceptable temperature range and how it changed with age. So the results show that the thermal preferences shift with age, and the oldest age group, 80 to 89, showed a reduced sensitivity and a narrowed comfort range. And in summer, the older individual become less tolerant of high temperature, and both their thermal sensitivity and acceptable range declined gradually with age. So this slide shows the neutral relative humidity and its range across the all age groups. In winter, the neutral relative humidity decreased with age, indicated older residents prefer more drier indoor air. And at the same time, their acceptable humidity range widens with age, especially in 80 to 89 age group. In summer, neutral relative humidity stayed relatively stable, but the oldest age group, 80 to 89, also showed a wider acceptable relative humidity range, also suggested a better humidity tolerance. This slide showed acceptable relative humidity across the age group, and the result is pretty much similar with the neutral relative humidity. So in conclusion, that as people aged, they prefer lower humidity, especially in winter, but also show a greater adaptability to humidity fluctuations. So in this section, we defined indoor design temperature based on our field results previously. Indoor design temperature combined neutral values with acceptable comfort zones, and it used as the set point in my simulation. Instead of using a single value for all, I assigned different set points by age group to better reflect their actual thermal needs and the tolerance. So in this study, I used Design Builder for the simulation and simplified the building models accordingly. So for traditional dwellings, the insulation layer of the single-pitched roof is typically placed above the interior ceiling, like you can see on this side pictures. Therefore, in simulation, the pinched roof was simplified to the flat roof. Modern dwellings are often constructed in pairs or rows, so the east and the west walls are considered insulated as they are connected to adjacent buildings and not directly exposed to the outdoor environment. And to fairly compare the thermal performance, the models retain the key structural features while unifying the internal spatial layout and zoning, so we can focus on differences in envelope components. This diagram shows the envelope configurations of both traditional and modern dwellings used in the simulation. So I applied two indoor temperature setting modes in the simulation mode. One used the standard set point temperature, while mode 2 applied age-specific set points based on our previous thermal comfort findings. This comparison helped me to evaluate how well conventional design assumptions meets the actual comfort needs of different elderly age groups. In this slide, compared measured and simulated indoor temperatures. The validation results showed a good agreement, indicated a reliable model performance. So the current indoor thermal comfort status of both dwelling in traditional dwelling that stay relatively cool in summer, which may feel comfortable for the elderly, but often fall below the defined comfort range, combined with the high humidity, relative humidity. This results in limited hours of full thermal comfort, which means met the temperature and humidity at the same time. Modern dwellings also tend to overheated in summer, and nearly a quarter of the time, indoor humidity exceeded the acceptable limits, which also resulted in limited hours of full thermal comfort. In winter, that comfort is limited in both dwelling types. Traditional dwellings showed consistently low indoor temperatures, falling to meet the comfort for most of the age groups. Modern dwellings perform slightly better than traditional dwellings, but also wider temperature and variations and high humidity may also cause discomfort. So given the poor winter thermal performance, it's important to understand which factors have the most impact on comfort and energy use. So in next simulations, I isolated key variables to evaluate their individual effects. For example, in this slide, by testing different orientations, I found that 45 degrees southwest orientation offered the best balance between indoor temperature improvement and energy efficiency in both traditional and modern dwellings. And this part of study evaluate cost-effective insulation strategies, external insulation using EPS and XPS at different thicknesses from 30 to 150 millimeters. So you can see in terms of temperature performance, indoor temperature increased with the insulation thicknesses. And XPS performs slightly better than EPS in traditional dwellings. You can see here. And for modern dwellings, two insulation performed a similar indoor temperature improvement. And in terms of energy saving performance here, that in traditional dwellings, energy saving beyond 120 millimeter were minimal. And for modern dwellings, the energy saving performance showed a better improvement than that in indoor temperature improvement. And for the roof insulation, indoor temperatures also increased as roof insulation thicknesses increased. XPS performed similar with EPS at the same thickness for indoor temperature improvements, as you can see here. In terms of the energy saving performance, two types of insulations also show the similar saving rates here. And in modern dwellings, two types of insulation showed a diminishing returns beyond 120 millimeters here. And there are 5 different window types were selected to test in the simulation. And the low E insulated glass, especially with argon filling, show the best performance improving indoor temperatures. Like and also for the energy efficiency for both type of dwellings. And during the field investigation that I found the floor height of existing rural dwellings in Guangdong region is generally high, with an average of approximately 3.5 meters. So this part of simulation explored the impact of ceiling height on winter energy consumptions. So lowering the ceiling height from 3.5 to 3 meters reduced the winter heating energy by used by over 3% in traditional dwellings. But further reduction to 2.7 meters had a smaller effect, showing a diminishing returns here. So this part of the study used the range value to assess the relative impact of 5 different passive design parameters on heating energy use. So for both traditional and modern dwellings, the window plays the most important roles here. But for traditional dwellings, the roof insulation goes second, and for modern dwellings, the wall insulation goes the second. So in the previous study, I analyzed how individual passive design parameters impact indoor temperature and energy consumption. So based on that, I realized that elderly of different age groups have distinct thermal comfort needs. Therefore, an age-based scoring system has been developed to evaluate each design combinations. The final score consists of 50% of thermal comfort score and 50% of energy saving scores. If the both indoor air temperature and relative humidity fall within the defined comfort range for the specific age group, the comfort score is going to be 1, otherwise it's going to be 0. And the energy score is calculated by the normalizing the heating energy consumption. Lower energy use means higher score. So by ranking all the combinations that the one that provide the best balance between comfort and efficiency across all age groups for modern dwellings are here, with the 90 millimeter EPSS wall insulation and 90 millimeter XPSS roof insulation, and the window should be low E insulated glass window with argan, and the orientation gonna be 45 degrees southwest, and the floor height goes with 3.5 meters. So for traditional dwellings, the 120 millimeter wall XPSS wall insulation and 120 millimeter EPS was the roof insulation, and the window type and orientation are similar with are the same with the modern dwellings. And the floor height goes to 3 meters. So this slide shows the result of under combination of only passive design parameters. So you can see in traditional dwellings that indoor temperature increased sharply by 171%. But this also caused a large drop in humidity, rising concern about dryness and overheating for the elderly residents. And for modern dwellings showed a more stable improvement in both temperature and humidity, but staying closer to the acceptable comfort levels. But this also suggested that the passive strategy alone may not fully meet the elderly comfort needs, especially in winter. In terms of energy saving performance after applying passive design strategies, in traditional dwellings, energy use dropped by 17%, while in modern dwellings, saving reached 33%. The larger reduction in modern dwellings highlighted their higher responsiveness to passive strategies. Also indicated that the better building envelope insulations has the greater potential for passive energy reduction. So although the passive strategies helped improve indoor thermal conditions, temperature and humidity levels still in rural dwellings like traditional or modern dwellings often still exceeded the comfort range for all age group elderly. This also highlighted the need to address age-specific comfort requirements and to supply passive measurements with active systems such as air source heat pumps here. And in rural northern China, that coal is still widely used because it's cheap and easy to access, but it's caused serious indoor pollution and health risk. As you can see, by comparing the Kang heating systems and coal stove heating system with air source heat pumps, that we can tell air source heat pumps can offer a cleaner and more sustainable alternative, making them more suitable for future rural upgrades. So this slide compares the indoor temperature and energy consumption between Kang heating system and air source heat pump systems only. The air source, we can tell that air source heat pumps not only increase the indoor temperature, but also provide a more stable thermal conditions throughout the day. As you can see here, the orange and red dot represents the air source heat pumps. And in terms of the energy saving performance, in traditional dwellings, energy use dropped by over 20%, and in modern dwellings, saving reached nearly 29%. So this slide shows the winter thermal comfort results for traditional dwellings used under Mode 2, which is gonna apply a passive strategy and plus the air source heat pumps here. Now we can tell the improved model significantly increased the proportion of the time that met both thermal and humidity comfort zones for the elderly. The temperature distribution became more concentrated and with the fewer hours falling below the comfort threshold. And for the modern dwellings, the results indicated that indoor operative temperature became more centralized, and is also suggested improved thermal stability and better alignment with comfort needs of elderly residents. Also increasing by the approximately 10% across almost all age groups here. In terms of energy saving performance here, in both traditional and modern dwellings, personalized set points led to further energy saving performance here. And in summer, since no active cooling system was used, comfort relied entirely on passive strategies. So the result showed that maintaining summer temperatures within the comfort range for almost all elderly age groups. The improved passive models also reduced indoor humidity fluctuations by limiting moisture exchange with the outdoor environment due to the enhanced air tightness. This also led to more stable and concentrated thermal conditions. And in modern dwellings, improved passive design enhanced the temperature stability and also increased the comfort hours. However, increased air tightness combined with the limited ventilations may cause indoor humidity to retain concentrated in a relatively higher range. So it's suggested the necessity of the integrating humidity control measurements in the future retrofits. This is also what I'm gonna do in the future study of this topic. So overall, this study investigated thermal comfort among rural elderly by combining on-site data, age-specific comfort models, and passive active strategies. And the goal of this study was to improve the comfort within the real-life rural conditions. Also, air source heat pumps here were proposed as a controllable systems to provide extra warmth when needed. So I hope these findings support the practical energy saving retrofits that respect both policy goals and local lifestyles. Thank you for listening. That's pretty much all what I'm gonna present.
はい、どうもありがとうございます。次は、まず先生方から。